Hello there. Today let's mind map. Introduction to Cost and Management Accounting. Before going further, let's generally understand cost and management accounting. Cost accounting. Cost accounting involves the calculation and measurement of the resources used by a business in undertaking its various activities and is concerned with identifying cost of various things, that is, gathering data about cost of products or services and cost of activities, whereas management accounting includes cost accounting as one of its discipline but is wider in scope. Cost and management accounting deals with various types of organizations. There are manufacturing organizations and service organizations. Manufacturing organizations. Types of costing systems they use. Basic manufacturing costing. Standard costing. Process costing. Job costing. Service organizations. Types of costing systems they use. Standard costing. Job costing. Cost classification. Cost classified on the basis of type, function, direct and indirect costs, product cost, period cost. Further costs are classified by type into material costs, labor costs, other expenses. Costs are classified by function into production costs and non-production costs. Direct and indirect costs are further classified into direct costs and indirect costs, overheads. Classification by type. Material costs. Material costs are the costs of any material items purchased with the intention of using them in fairly short-term future. For example, raw material that go into the production process. Cost of stationery, cartridges replacement. Labor costs. Labor costs are the employees' remuneration costs paid by the entity and includes wages and salaries of part-time workers, bonuses, pension contribution, etc. Other expenses. That costs which are not material or labor costs and includes cost of services provided by external suppliers, telephone cost, rental costs, depreciation charges. Classification by function. Production costs. The costs that are incurred in manufacturing finished products up to the time goods are completed. Includes material costs of raw materials and components used in production. Labor costs of all employees working for the manufacturing function, and other expenses. Non-production costs. Non-production costs includes administrative costs. Cost of providing administrative services to entity usually includes salaries to staff in administration. Cost of office space, rent. Other expense incurred for administration only. Selling and distribution costs. The costs incurred in marketing and selling goods or services to customers and costs of delivering the goods. The costs of after-sales services such as customer support services are usually included in these costs. They usually include salaries to staff in selling and distribution, advertising costs and other marketing costs, operating costs for delivery vehicles such as fuel costs and repairs, other costs incurred for selling and distribution department, finance costs. These are the costs that are involved in financing the organization, for example loan interest bank OD. They are generally included in administration costs, or alternatively finance costs might be excluded from cost accounting system. Remember, some costs might be partly production, partly administration and selling and distribution, for example salaries of managing director, building rental costs. In such case costs are divided/apportioned between function S on fair basis. Classification: direct and indirect costs. Direct costs. Costs that can be traced in full to a cost unit that is a direct cost can be attributed in its entirety to the cost of an item that is being produced. The following are direct costs. Direct material. All the materials that are used directly in manufacturing a product or providing service. Direct materials includes both raw materials and components. Direct labor. These are specific costs associated with labor time spent directly on production of goods or services. Direct expenses. Expenses that can be attributed directly in full to a cost unit, that is, that have been incurred in full in making a unit of product, service. Remember, in manufacturing type organization, direct expenses are not common. Indirect costs, overheads. An indirect cost, overhead cost, is any cost that is not a direct costs. Indirect costs cannot be attributed directly and full to a cost unit. Indirect costs include production overheads and non-production overheads. Each of these might include the following. Indirect material. Indirect material are any materials that are used, consumed, that cannot be attributed in full to the item. They are treated as overhead costs, may be classified as production overheads, administration overheads, selling and distribution overheads. For example, indirect production material includes some items of cleaning materials and any materials used by staff not engaged in production. Indirect labor. They mainly consists of the costs of indirect labor employees, who do not work directly on items that are produced, but may be necessary so that production takes place. All employees in administration and the marketing department, including management, are indirect labor. Indirect expenses. Many costs incurred cannot be directly linked to cost units, for example rental costs of factory. In manufacturing company, all costs of administration and selling and distribution are treated as indirect overheads. Product cost and period cost. Product cost. Product cost include the prime cost plus production overhead. Product cost are associated with goods that are produced or purchased for resale. They are inventory and only expended out when sold. Period cost. The costs that do not contribute towards the value of inventory. These are expended in the period in which they occur. Cost behavior. Cost behavior refers to the way in which costs changes as volume of the activity changes. As a general rule, total costs are expected to increase as volume of activity rises. Understanding of cost behavior helps to forecast, plan what costs ought to be. Compare actual cost with budgeted. Costs are classified on behavior as fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed cost. These costs remain fixed, same in total during a period no matter how many units are produced and regardless the volume or scale of activity. However, the cost per unit falls because the cost is being spread over a greater number of units. Semi-variable cost. A semi-variable cost is a cost that is partly fixed and partly variable. It is often assumed that total costs of an activity are mixed. Stepped cost. A cost which is fixed within a limited range of activity and goes up or down in steps when the volume of activity rises above or falls below certain levels. Variable cost. These costs increase usually by the same amount for each additional unit of product or service provided. The variable cost of a cost unit is also called marginal cost of unit. This means that total variable costs increase in direct proportion to the volume of output or activity. The cost per unit remains fixed. However, total cost increase as more units are made. Thanks for watching. More stuff coming soon.